Story number 3 today is bringing Avengers Endgame back into the fold because we've got yet another box office report for you. According to a press release sent out by Fandango earlier today, Avengers Endgame sold 5 times as many tickets as Infinity War sold in its first 7 days of pre-sales. And now apparently Fandango's exhibition partners are posting new showtimes, some of which start as early as 4 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. on Friday the 26th. And then on top of that, it's not just Fandango. We have Atom Tickets saying that Endgame sold twice as many tickets in the first week as the next 4 record holders combined, and those record holders are Aquaman, The Last Jedi, Infinity War, Captain Marvel. We kind of spoke a little bit about this before we even started rolling, but now you guys know I am firmly in the camp that I think Avengers Endgame is going to wind up being the very first movie to open north of $300 million. Do you join me in that club based on hearing this report?
Absolutely. I mean, I was already leaning towards that anyway, but now the numbers you just cited are insane. They're frankly hard to believe.
I know.
I'm not sitting here going, it's a Marvel conspiracy, but it's really hard for me to wrap my head around numbers in advance that are that strong. I don't see how it could not cross that line at this point.
I mean, as you pointed out, it would be the first film to ever do that. So just on that level, part of me's a little skeptical. That said, if any movie is going to pull that off, it's probably this one, at least for the foreseeable future. So maybe, sure.
Well, then the question becomes, because this is something else we brought up earlier, it's still crazy to me that Avatar is so far and away the biggest moneymaker there is. So opening weekend is one thing. If this thing wound up posting a $300 million plus opening, it would be historic, a major thing to applaud, but also legs are super important. Are we also talking about this movie becoming the highest moneymaker of all time?
I think it's pretty likely. I mean, especially if it's outperforming Infinity War at this rate, and it offers something Infinity War didn't, supposedly, having not obviously seen it, but closure, which is something like a lot of fans are going to want after that Infinity War ending. The only, the main obstacle, I guess, for legs would be the number of people who aren't going the first weekend who also are going to go, 3 hours pass. There are definitely... We exist within the nerdosphere where we're all we've accepted 3 hours. I know many people without of that sphere who are absolutely not. So we'll see how much of the broader public is willing to, A, give that time up in the first place, which I think most people will do once, but how about repeat viewings?
And just to paint a little bit of a picture here, so right now, Avatar has $2.788 billion worldwide. The next thing after that is Titanic with 2.187. I mean, that's a pretty significant gap right there. So to have Endgame just leap up and cross all of that is an extremely tall order. I mean, I might sound like a broken record in terms of me not believing the 300 million was a possibility and then all of a sudden changing my tune, but it still seems like a stretch. I still look at Avatar like a complete anomaly that I really can't quite put a finger on, but I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see how things pan out weekend 1 and then weekend 2.
I mean, I think weekend 1, it being, 300 million, I think that to me seems like a more attainable goal than being the highest grossing movie ever. And I think that so much more will go into whether this has legs. Right now, it's being sold on hype and the promise that it's going to pay off everything that we've been waiting for and everything. So people are kind of just buying this product sight unseen, basically, because they're not even telling us that much about it. It was almost kind of a foregone conclusion that this was going to make a lot of money. But I feel like once that first weekend has passed and once people are thinking about I didn't see it the first weekend, but should I see it this weekend? Should I rewatch it? I think at that point so much more is going to go into it, what the word of mouth is, how the reviews are, whether it's the kind of movie. Sometimes a movie is really good, but it's not the kind of thing you want to see over and over. So, I think so much more will go into how long it lasts. People keep going back to movies for reasons that are different than the reason that they show up in the first weekend. So I think a lot of factors are in play there.
There's also the element of Avatar, which is that it was really a pioneering film technologically that kind of sold not that audiences hadn't seen 3D film before, but certainly not the way it was used and embraced in that film. And I think that really, like, I remember I worked at a movie theater during that time period, and people were just so excited, like, is it really as cool as they say? And everybody was just really like, have they finally figured out 3D? And everyone had to see it. And then a lot of people who did see it wanted to see it again to, like, because they were so blown away by the 3D experience. So it doesn't have that edge.
Yeah, and I would also point out that, like, because of exactly what you were saying, the way it was a technological marvel, people really felt like it was something that you had to see in theaters to get the full impact. I don't necessarily know if that is as true of Avengers Endgame. I do think the thing it has going for it is that it's such a cultural moment that people might feel like, I need to see it just to keep up with my friends and just to be part of this conversation. But I can see, like, for example, like, my husband is someone who only kind of cares about these movies. Like, I feel like he's someone who's like, I'm fine waiting for it to hit iTunes, you know, like, it's not reinventing the wheel here.
It's incredible how foreign that statement feels to me right now. I mean, maybe it's because we're just so steeped in it and talk about it every single second of every single day for the most part, but it's like my brain almost like doesn't compute that mentality when it comes to this specific movie anymore. It's a little scary.
I know what you mean, and that's why it's good sometimes to talk to people who are not other like nerd journalists or film critics, because you're like, right, other people exist and they do other things besides talk about superheroes.
You got to step out of the bubble every once in a while. Meanwhile, starting tomorrow, I am firmly jumping in the Star Wars bubble,
You're deep in the bubble.
Beyond thrilled to exist in it for a whole 3-4 days. I can't wait.
I'm excited for you. I mean, to Angie's point, though, I'm very close with my family, and I hang out with a lot of like 60 to 70-year-old women, and they are always like, what are you talking about? And please stop. They don't care.
I mean,
like,
actually,
my family. I'm not saying all older people don't care, but specifically my family is like, stop talking about superheroes.
But actually, I do think that's interesting because you cited Avatar and Titanic as two of the biggest moneymakers of all time, and those were both movies where people like your, you know, older relatives or spouses that don't care about stuff, like there were still reasons for them to watch it. Like, Avengers Endgame is the biggest thing if you're someone who's been following these movies this whole time and are deeply invested in this franchise. But if you're not, if you're like my mom who still can't quite wrap her mind around the concept of superheroes, let alone why anyone would watch them, like, there's nothing that's going to get her to go to the theater, you know?
Funny enough, one of my closest friends and relatives, my aunt, her favorite movie, Avatar.
Oh,
really?
We found one.
She's seen it more than I think I've seen any movie, and you know how I love to rewatch movies.